Welcome back to episode 18 of A Brutal Vulcan Start. Here we are returning from the mining run that we ended the previous episode with. Do a little maintenance here. We'll grab some CO2. It's about 127 Celsius CO2, so it's kind of a little warm. And we'll grab the empty O2 bottle so we can refresh that. Now, we do have that big tank of water that we have picked up, so we don't really need to be doing this water thing, but we'll just keep it going for a little bit longer. All right, so in this episode, I'm going to set up the air conditioning system. So, reason why there's been a bit of a delay between 17 and 18 is I spent a lot of time trying to work out a phase change air conditioning system. Yeah, I think I have a setup that I like, ignoring the elements outside using, the door cooling system. The stuff inside only involves 4 chambers, no pumps, no valves, none of that stuff. So no IC chips, none of that complexity. So it once the except for the 4 chambers that are running, nothing else is consuming any power. Now, I do have the radiator array outside, just like I did before, which automatically opens the doors when the pipe itself is hotter than the outside temperature and closes the door when the opposite happens. So ignoring that, which you could actually do it without that, but that would make it a lot less efficient. So I'll be spending most of this episode building that and dealing with a small emergency in the hydroponic room. So another mistake I've been making, this is pointed out, one of the problems switching over to the heavy suit is that the hygiene penalty is much faster with a heavy suit. And so and I'm still wearing my heavy suit, and I have a light suit, my original suit, all set up, all prepped, ready to go, and I've not been wearing it. So any future Vulcan runs, or Vulcan brutal runs, we'll say, even a Vulcan run, even a normal Vulcan run, I would say what you want to do is you want to switch over to the light suit as soon as possible, and only use the heavy suit if you have to do something during the day, during the midday type zone. If you go for a short time, it's not a big deal. So basically, it's sort of weird. If you're in brutal, you start with a light suit, and so you should stay with that. Really, don't even waste your time making a heavy suit. To tell you the truth, I think I wouldn't bother next time, because I can limit my mining during the night, because it doesn't take that long to mine. And then there's enough. Once the base gets to a certain size, there's enough going on inside to keep you busy anyway. And if you're playing normal mode Vulcan, where you start with a heavy suit, I probably would make a light suit, EVA suit, and wear that most of the time. Once again, during the night, it's fine. Inside, it's fine. And if you're in the heat of the day, sure, switch over to the other suit. But once you're able to process the waste gas, you carry extra waste tank with you, and you can really go out anytime and just, you're going to go through a lot of O2 and waste gas, but if you can process it, it doesn't matter. So I think getting a little too giddy on switching over to the heavy suit was a mistake. And at some point, I will switch over to my light suit in this episode, and probably rarely use my heavy suit unless I know I need to do a serious, daytime construction or mining run, and then switch over. All right, so that out of the way, one of the learning experiences. So here we are. We, went into the still wearing my heavy suit. Unfortunately, I figured this out, about halfway through the episode. I'll switch over and realize I'm just being stupid here. All right, so we did the hydration, we ate all that stuff, we checked the hydroponics, we dumped some more CO2 in there, we topped off our O2 bottle to make some more water, and now we're doing the little smelting here. And since I don't do really big mining runs, I'm just leaving the sub 50s in my mining belt, and the 50s that are more significant, you know, coal, cobalt, lead, silver, all that, I put in the shelf. The generic stuff, I just smelt all that. And so I went and degassed it. Now I'm trying to get it back through again. Looking around for any more ores that went running off. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and let's see. And that should be fine leaving that on. Actually, we're going to check that tank. And that tank is still too hot to move over, so we don't want to start any additional water batches. We get that batch out. All right, so for the cooling system, we're going to go through a crap load of insulated pipes. We're going to have 3 small insulated tanks. We're going to have a bunch of insulated utility things, both for liquid and gas. I'm also going to set up a power vent on the other end. And nope, not this one. Everything's going here. And this is like the busy, almost need a second printer. Yeah, my little pile of steel is going down. I think next episode I'm going to have to go out and collect a lot more iron. I got plenty of coal, so I just need to grab a lot of iron and do some serious steel smelting again. Okay, so I made 2 power vents. We have the electronic parts laying around. And we actually need some plastic, which I forget to bring over with me. We're just going to stick that O2 bottle there and stick this here for now, just to get them out of the way. And we're just getting that topped off. So we got to build a crap load of stuff. Here's some, and you'll see kind of what's going on with the cooling system as I set it up. So the while we're printing here, I'll monologue on some of the cooling stuff. So in the design of the phase change cooling, you need some type of we'll call it refrigerant, and give basically a temperature range. Now, for the temperature range I'm dealing with here in Vulcan, like, you know, from 150 down to 20, pollutants are perfect for that scenario, and it's also freely available, so I don't have to like tap into water or anything like that. The problem is you have to sort of charge the system with pollutants. Okay, well, the problem is how much pollutants, and you know, when you stop charging, and you know, and so the problem I had, I started, you know, charging the system. And then at some point, the you know, and there's a because I have 2 stages, I have 2 set of, and you're talking about the gas side of the pollutant. So between the chambers, we have, you know, a pollutant connection, and it's just gas. We have a liquid one on the bottom, but that seems not problematic. All right, so we start adding pollutants. I set like a pressure regulator for like 250, you know, really low. So it only adds if it needs to. If there's already gas in there, it doesn't bother adding any more additional gas. This is my big power vent I'm putting in here. This is really nice in a base because it'll evacuate this base in like nothing. If I actually knock a frame out, I can just turn that sucker, put the frame back, turn it back on, and boom, vacuum. All right, so back to our pollutant problem. All right, so we start the system up. It starts sucking up pollutants. That's wonderful. And the problem is, well, how do we know when it's charged? So at some point, go, okay, well, it seems like it's not sucking any more pollutants. We'll turn it off. But then at some point later on, it needs more pollutants. Okay, so we keep it more pollutants. Because if it doesn't have enough pollutants, it can't, the condenser can't compress the temperature high enough and generate the liquids. It shuts down. So you got to have enough pollutants. Well, there's a second problem, and that's too much pollutants. Because so you get the system charge that's running, and with Vulcan, you have these temperature variations. So the system's running happy, so it's nighttime, and it's running well. But then daytime hits. And so the radiators outside become effectively useless. So the pipes, they radiate the waistline going outside will go ahead and top off at about 150. That sort of shuts down the whole process. But that means since it's heating up, there's less pollutants turning to liquids, which means there's more overall gas, and that gas has to go somewhere. So this become a problematic thing. All the experiments I've done is that pollutant line would, between the chambers or my own configuration, would, the amount of gas in it would go up. And since it goes up, it means the pressure goes up. If the pressure goes up, it starts liquefying. If it liquefies, then it starts getting hot. And that becomes a big problem. So it's, all right, so how do I deal with this? Well, maybe I put a condenser connection between the pollutant line and the liquid line below it, right? Well, now we just created a second condensing chamber effectively. And we have no place for the heat to go from the pollutant line. Okay, so let's put a radiator on there. All right, so this is now getting silly, right? We're just recreating a chamber between the chambers. All right. Another solution, well, let's put a back pressure valve. So if the pollutant line pressure goes up, we'll just reduce it before it has a chance to turn to a liquid. All right, well, we still have to have a way to introduce pollutants back in the line. So let's put a pressure regulator. So we have pressure regulator set at like 250, and then we have a back pressure regulator at 1 megapascal to remove gas. And then so now we have all that crap. All right, so this is getting silly too. So, and I tried putting, I'd say, well, you just have to buffer it. You need more buffering, in the pollutant line. So you throw some inline tanks on there, and they're just not big enough. So you're sitting there still stuck. You got these, and you say, well, I'll put 2 inline tanks, 3 inline tanks. I'll put all this crap in there. And, I wasn't successful doing that, And so what I finally end up doing is I just take a small insulated tank, put it on the other side, and it contains the reservoir of pollutants. And because it's so large, I can put a lot of moles in there and keep the pressure low. And so with that solution, I no longer need, any other active components, because if the system gets hot because it's daylight, the pollutants can just move back into that big insulated tank. And I can start the insulated tank with a lot of pollutants, like way more than I need. So it always has extra in there. That way I don't have to micromanage, exactly how many moles do I need for the maximum possible usage scenario. I just put a bunch in there and it's way overkill. And because the tank has such a large volume, 600 liters, that prevents the pressure going up. Pressure doesn't go up, then it won't cause a liquid. And that all works. So that's what I ended up doing, and that made the whole thing much simpler. Now you throw a lot of you have 2 insulated tank per pollutant line, but that removes all that complexity from the system. So that's what we're going with now, and that solved a lot of my problems designing these systems. All right, so what's been going on construction-wise here? So you saw I put in the power vent. Because of that, I moved the outside passive vent over. Because of that, I have more room, so I decided to extend the my cooling room. Now this cooling room is exactly the same design as what I built many episodes ago for the my initial cooling system for water. So this is what I use for the water system, is I have a cooling room in there that reduces the temperature, and if it gets hot outside, the doors closes so it doesn't reheat the liquid. This is the same thing except a little larger. So we have 4 doors across. The door in the very end won't be part of the automatic open. It's just a door I can get into the room if I need to. Probably at some point I can make it a, if I just rename it, I'm going to put this in the wrong place, but I'll move it later on. That's the right place. That's the wrong place. But we'll just move that. All right. So yeah, this is just, so this is the cooling side because the system I'm setting up is closed loop. Trying to think how this goes. I want the pretty side on the inside, so it goes there. So this is a closed loop system. This is for the first stage. This is next to the waistline of the first stage of the system, which is a condensing chamber, or condensation chamber, should we say. And we put it on its own transformer like before. It keeps the programming the chip much easier. Also, we use a broadcast to open the doors. Now, we do a name broadcast, so it's not as dangerous. But since we're doing broadcasts, I definitely want to keep that in its own circuit. All right, so I'm just going to put a bunch of pipes in here. And this is just, now, yeah, these could be just normal pipes, right? They shouldn't be insulated pipes. And this is my quirk, is that basically I get to a certain point, and if it's outside, I kind of like always use, I'm probably smart about this and just use normal pipes, but I get to a certain point where I have a lot of steel and stuff, so I just make everything insulated. This way, if I take this apart, I can just reuse these for anything, and I don't want to end up with a pile of normal pipes I can't do anything with. So, yeah, okay. Well, in this case, I probably should have made all this just normal pipes. So if you're recreating this, just use normal pipes, except where it changes between rooms, make that insulated. Because I want the ability to put an atmosphere in the workshop at some point. So I want to keep that insulated. But given the fact that mining is so easy on Vulcan, and especially with the sensor lenses, and not that big of a deal. But I tend to use a lot of insulated pipes everywhere once I get to that point. Now, for hydroponics inside, then I tend to only use not insulated, because it's sort of dedicated to that. But for gas lines like this, I sort of overkill it. And yeah, you get a little bit of radiation effect from the pipe itself, but it's so minor, it's like almost nothing. So it's not like I'm losing much cooling ability from that. Yeah, I decided not to have it right next to the door there, and took that off. Okay, so we're hitting the daytime, so we're just gonna smack into the wall there. And so these extra doors are coming in handy to fly halfway across the base to get back in the base and then run all the way across. All right, so we got our power vent not wired up yet, and we got to deal with our hydration issue here. So something else you've seen is with the chambers, I alternate the direction, and that seems to put a nice, more compact layout for the piping. So that's the other weird thing with chambers, is getting them laid out. I think the chambers only use like 50 watts each. So the system inside, because there's no other active components, no logic, no chips, no nothing. So the whole thing requires, 50 watts. I mean, 200 watts. And I could make it slightly smart that when the system can no longer really function because it's too hot outside, I could shut it down, have a chip monitor the efficiency of the system, and basically when it becomes inefficient, i.e. peak of the day, and we can't cool the first chamber anymore, we could shut it all down and in theory save a little bit of power. Now the chip itself uses 50 watts, but daylight cycle is a long time, so you could overall net save power by shutting down with that complexity, but not going to bother. Okay, so we gotta make a lot of stuff here. I'm going to work through my pile of ingots real fast here. All right, so another fun problem with the phase change systems, you got to prep, and specifically closed loop, you got to prep them. So we're going to use CO2 between outside radiators and the first chamber. And then between the stages, we're going to have CO2 to exchange heat between the two stages. And then the final stage, the cooling loop that will run through the building, that'll also be CO2. And so we need to collect a lot of CO2 that we'll use for the prepping the system. So that's while I'm building it up, I need to go ahead and start pulling out CO2 out of that big tank upstairs. Which means when I first start the system up, everything's kind of overly hot. All the transfer, CO2 is too hot, and the pollutants are too hot, and so it takes a while to really get cranking as it cools down all that gas and everything else and get going. And once it gets going, then it does pretty well. It'll get the final stage goes down to about 20, 25, 24 Celsius, which is fine. It should go down to 20, but I guess as you hit those limits, it probably becomes less efficient and takes longer to hit those things. All right, so we're in a little hydroponic dealing with the, once again, the switching suits would make the hygiene problem much easier to deal with, but that could be dense at some time. Man, 55 days already. Time flies when you're having fun. And sort of back with the overall flow, there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to automate and make better, but I can't, I'm stuck without a good cooling solution, because to automate water, I need to cool it. To automate injecting CO2, I need to cool it. I need to improve the cooling for this room and get rid of that stupid AC system I put up. So I have all these cooling problems. So once I get the main cooling system running, then and run a cooling loop, which will give, about 25 to 30 Celsius gas, I can use that for, cooling everything else. That puts it basically within plant. And for example, I can put an AC system in here and have the coolant line connected right to the main coolant line instead of sitting outside. And that'll make that AC way more efficient, to the point that I could slowly eject, 127 Celsius CO2 into the room and just let the AC system deal with it, which is a solution to the CO2 injection. Because I don't inject CO2 that quickly. So if I kind of, say the room is at 25, inject it until it hits like 28 and stop injecting CO2, let it cool back down, add some more, assuming there's not, you check the CO2 percentage so and all that. So and part of the delay of the this phase change cooling system is the fact that I'm just trying to figure it out. I mean, I spent such countless times in creative trying to figure out, a system, and design one without chambers and with chambers, and this pollution issue, the line between them heating up and generating liquids has been my problem set, and I really just didn't get the problem. And it's more apparent on Vulcan, I think, because you have these times when the system can't heat anymore and can't cool anymore, and it causes an excessive amount of pollutants to be pushed in the gas. If you had a more steady state system, like a constant temperature outside, you probably wouldn't have that problem. Or it may sneak up on you if you had like some big load on the system you didn't expect, and you can all of a sudden have all these pollutants showing up. All right, so this is the pollutant line. So that top line is pollutants between the chambers. And so what we're going to do is store the small tanks on the other side of the room. I thought about squeezing between the chambers, but that wouldn't, I don't think, work out too well. And then, you know, I'd run a much longer liquid pipe and all that. So I decided not to do that, and I decided to go ahead and just put them over here. We got plenty of room. Now it's possible once I monitor the system long enough, I might be able to optimize the amount of pollutants and then put in inline tanks and all that. But I played around with that a little bit, but you know, it's hard because on Vulcan you have that huge swing of temperatures, because so once this system is it gets hot outside, this waistline doesn't work, so you get more pollutants. But when it's working, then more of your gas pollutants turn into liquids. So if you don't have enough gas, the system shuts down. So you're stuck in this. You need to deal with all this. You need to have enough gas to operate during peak time, peak optimum times, and you got to have enough storage for the gas to deal with the hot times. And you have to be able to deal with it in a way that it doesn't exceed, like, you know, 4 megapascals, so it doesn't turn into liquids. So I think the easiest solution is go for a big hammer approach, and we'll just put a big effing insulated tank, and we'll fill that with pollutants. You put about, you know, I think you get away with half a megapascals of pollutants, but I'll put like maybe up to 1 megapascals, and that gives it plenty of reserves, and it means to dump pollutants in somewhere it has plenty of room, and it will never get, you know, overpressurized. So we solve the whole liquid issue, so we don't worry about that anymore, and that simplifies it. And I'd rather throw a small tank at the issue to solve the complexity of adding, you know, all this other crap, and to make that work. Unfortunately, I get it all prepped. I don't actually be able to fire it up in this episode. It takes a while to get that thing constructed. That's the other downside of these phase change systems. But it's like this. It takes a while to get it going. Once it's running, it's very efficient, power-wise. See what's going on with my water here. Okay, that's definitely cold enough. See that decision making, that would be nice to automate that. It wouldn't be very hard to put a chip there, but I kind of want to think about moving this water production stuff somewhere else, probably in the other room nearer to the cooling system. And then sort of get the new system working and then rip all this out. The same with that. Those two things get ripped out once I have the other stuff set up. This room will get emptied out quite a bit once I have the other stuff going on. Now for Vulcan, talk about cooling solutions. Now you can get away with just taking 2 AC systems, you know, 2-stage AC system with just some pollutants. Some CO2 between them for exchange gas, you know, and you could put a fancy radiator outside with doors, or just put a simple radiator outside that heats up during the day and cools down at night, you know. And you know, two AC systems, you know, they produce reasonable cooling power, you know, and go with that solution. That works a lot less effort getting set up. It won't be as efficient than what I have. And obviously you have the open cycle first stage cooling, which is what I first set up, and it's reasonably compact. It gives you about, you know, 60 Celsius gas. You could use that as a first stage and put an AC behind it as a second stage. That's just pretty simple. Set up a, you know, open loop type system for open loop phase change, put a normal AC as a second stage behind it. And that's a pretty reasonable solution too, and that doesn't involve as much hardware. And then you don't need the door crap on the outside and all that. So you have different levels of complexity. So, you know, really for if you want to, you know, dump heat outside, either go with the open loop system, which sort of just pumps gas in and out, or you have to put in radiators outside. And if you do that, you know, you really need to protect them during the day. You don't have to, but you know, you're going to pay that cost of cooling them all back down again. You spend like half the night getting them back down to temperature, which loses a lot of time. So the doors add a lot of efficiency. Here I am wiring all this up. Since I alternate these two, you know, I still have plans. Now I sort of have the pollutant issue figured out. I still want to sit down and sort of like recreate this, but with discrete components and not using chambers. I've actually attempted that, but you end up with all these components, and it probably uses a lot more power than you just use the chambers. So, okay, so this is going to be my reserve of CO2. Decided to change my mind, move it around. Which means this is the output of the final stage. So this is the gas that will be maintained at around 25 to 30 Celsius, depending on load. And this will be sent around the base. So I put a big tank on it, and the reason for that is that as I start adding pipes and moving this gas all over the base, the pressure will start dropping. Now, before when the pipes were much bigger, that was a bigger issue. Now it's very much smaller, but I want to put a big reserve in there. And the other thing happens is that when this thing gets going, it takes a while to really get the operating temperature, but it has that big mass of gas to heat up. I mean, cool back down. And thus, if I put, you know, like I have a big batch of water I want to cool down, it puts a shock to the system. By having all that extra gas, it sort of absorbs that shock that hits the system with, and then and deal with that. So it takes longer to get up the temperature or down the temperature, should I say, but it has that ways to absorb those hits. Okay, so I'm going to add, I don't really know if these are necessary. I'm just adding some mass to the liquid area between the pipes, and I probably could take those out and not hurt anything, but I put them in for my experiments. I didn't try the experiment of removing them, so we don't need this on. So I'm just going to leave them there. They look kind of cool, so we'll go with that. All right, so now the next problem is we have this gas we've been collecting, and it's, you know, 127 Celsius night gas, but it's way over here. And I need to tap into this because I want to pull CO2 from this, because it's already there and it's the right temperature, so I can run this, you know, all the time because this tank is really big. And I'll pull both CO2 out of this to get the system prepped, and then I'll pull pollutants out of this to get the system prepped. So now we're stuck with this long, this is why I made all these pipes. Now these pipes need to be insulated because they're outside. So this is good. And we got to run them all the way around. Still have my little hole there. And then I kind of know the tank is right before the that hole there, because I know the floor changes, so I know about where I want to go. And we'll stick it like that. Still in my heavy suit, haven't switched over to that yet. Learn my lessons. and back in. Yeah, I think putting these multiple airlocks, especially these larger bases, is a definite win. Okay, it's starting to look pretty cool, eh? So we have condenser, evaporator have the alternating, so the pipes are not as bad. They line up. I did add some mass to the pipes and the coolant line, or the coolant line between the chambers and outside, just to give it a little more oomph. And this will be the filtration that will pull out the CO2 out of the outside line, and then go ahead and pump it and get the system prepped. So that's another issue with this complex design. It takes a while to get the system all prepped and going. There's other designs you can do where you almost do like an auto prep system. I had a system in like for Venus, which I had like 9 AC systems, but I had it set up with one-way valves. So basically when I turned it on, it would auto prep all the other stages. And so you just had to set it up, turn it on. It took a while to get going, but once it got going, you're fine. And with this system, we have to prep it. All right, so I'm in a pipe outside. So basically, I'm not taking the waste and looping it back into the main tank because it's so cheap to add more gas. I just dump the excess. That's why I don't muck with the ratios of gas in the main tank. So I can afford to be wasteful in this scenario. So I grabbed a couple more of those insulated utility units, and we'll put a pipe cowl on the outside. So I don't have to worry about moving around and mounting a vent somewhere. We need some pipes for the AC system. And what I'll do, I'll connect pipes I'll temporarily connect all the CO2 coolant lines together just to fill them. And once I get them filled, then I'll disconnect them back out. And then we should have to touch the CO2 at that point. We may have to inject more CO2 in the final stage if we add a crap load of pipes everywhere, but that really shouldn't be needed, or be needed long in the future, because I'm putting a lot of mass in there with that small insulated tank. And of course, we'll need more and more insulated pipes, lots of insulated pipes. Yeah, I was getting low on cables too, so putting more of them up. I thought about trying to slide some trading in during this building session, but keeping pretty busy trying to get this thing up and going. And we'll just kind of pop this right here. Yeah, I still need to finish that exterior radiator automation stuff, but I want to get the CO2 loading first. And while that's perking, then I can go ahead outside and finish up that work. All right, so we have dropped some cables in it. If I can find a screwdriver. Yeah, from my experiments with a two-stage system on Vulcan, I can hit 20 Celsius. I might be able to adjust the dials a little bit on the chambers and nail it down to 20. But I think anything lower than that will require a third chamber. Should I say a third stage, which would be 2 more chambers paired up. So if you want to convert things into liquids, you need at least another stage. I'm not sure if you can get away with using pollutants in that last stage. I'm not sure when it freezes up. Obviously it goes in liquid form, but it has to transition. If it can't transition anymore, but it stays liquid and doesn't heat up enough to evaporate, then it's not very useful. I think the next thing to use after that would be water for that next stage. But we're only doing 2 stages, so we don't have to worry about that problem. Okay, so now we got that set up. We need to put some pipes in here, temporary pipes to, so we want to redirect the O2 into this tank. And we can start this out while we finish the extension. So we got to hook it up to the next, so we go hook it up to this N and fill it up. And then the section in the middle, we have to fill that up. So if I start on this and work my way down, all this piping gets removed later on. I guess I could have run it across the ceiling and then like in the back of the ceiling there and put in valves I can turn off. Then if I ever want to like recharge it, I just have to open the valves and pump more CO2 in there. But I don't think that ever going to happen. The first stage and between the first and second stage, there's no reason to ever add more gas to that. And this last stage is special because if something decides to pull out CO2, the advantage of using CO2 in this last stage is that if you want to actually just pull the CO2 out of it, like for the hydroponic, all you gotta do is it's reasonably cooled to just pull it out. But if you do that, you're gonna have to inject more CO2 into the system occasionally. So not sure which way to do it. Just keep this closed looped and just use radiators for other CO2 or just pull it out. Got to cool it either way. But for now, I'm just going to use this to prep the system. Once it hits a reasonable pressure, I don't know, 3 or 4 megapascals, then I'll disconnect it and then I'll reuse the filtration unit for pollutants. So while that's perking, we can go ahead and take care of some other items here. Yeah, we're going to need a buttload of radiators. Okay, the radiator thing is interesting. So they do have these larger, like medium size and large radiators. And I forget, there's just one, I think it's a medium size. And it basically takes up the whole frame. You only put like one per frame. And if there's anything else on the frame, like a wall or something that encroaches on the frame, you can't place it. So it seems pretty restrictive. And since I'm trying to keep a compact environment, then I'm just using the simple ones. And according to Stationpedia, 9 of the basic radiators is equivalent to one of those medium ones. So as long as I put 9 up, and I'm much more flexible where I can place those smaller radiators. You can kind of put them everywhere on the wall. You can double layer them, whatever you want to do with them. So we're just doing that. That's why I tend to use them right now. If I had a lot more space and whatnot, I guess I could go the other way. If you could sort of pack those other radiators closer together or more densely, that'd be different. But that's why I tend not to use them. Maybe the super large ones would be better, but. Once the system is operating, I can see if it's keeping up or not. If it's not keeping up, I can always boost that up outside. Just make that room bigger. I can even add the other type of radiators with the rest of them too. I can mix and match without a problem. So here I am sitting here kind of waiting for my hygiene to clear. Okay, so now I'm thinking I'm getting tired of this hygiene crap. I really should be wearing this lighter suit. I didn't want to put the suit on yet until so. All right, so at this point, I switched back to my old suit. And like I said, I should have done this a long time ago. And And after we covered the hygiene debt, but over time it does seem like it definitely is a much better thing to have on. So when I'm working in the rest of the base, and I'll cut back some of this dead time. Let me speed through this one section. We'll be doing 3x staring at the, oh, I cleared it, so we're almost done. All right, so we got the small suit on, so we finally addressed that issue. Let's get back to do some work here. I got a bunch of radiators. And this is the stuff I need to finish automating the outside. We have go ahead. So this script is identical to the script that I used earlier on. I will still just put a copy in the description for this episode, but it's the same script I used before. Nothing too fancy. Now, obviously, my hygiene kicked back on again. That's because I wait till it just clears, and then I, zip back out. So it's going to pop back on, but hopefully the rate of accumulation is slower now. So I put this valve on here because what I want to do here is that tank is pretty darn big, and I don't want it, impacting filling the other sections. So that way I can turn it on and off and kind of muck with it. So we need a pipe analyzer for the automation, so it can compare the pipe temperature to the outside temperature and decide whether to open or close the doors. And keep cranking out those pipes. They're pretty universal. You can use them anywhere. So yeah, I could put another bank of this down a little further and just duplicate this. Hopefully this is more than enough to sort of like see what's going on here. I believe once you're over like 100 kilopascals, you're pretty fine with the cooling effect, but I'm just going to crank it up a bit high. A little more gas is not going to hurt anything. Okay, so another interesting configuration issue with the chambers is, what do you set them at? And you see I'm setting the first one at 5800, and this one at 4800. And this one will be 42. And the last one will be, let's see what I type here, 3500. All right, so I did try like 5800 and then like 3500 and then 5800, and basically I'm duplicate. That doesn't work. You can't get the final stage low enough in temperature, so that just not going to work. And so basically the first stage has 5800, which is sort of operate with the atmosphere here. And then it has 4200 for the evaporation. And that gets the temperature lower than what the next stage needs. So the next stage is 4800, which would be a higher temperature than the evaporation than the previous one. And last stage is 35, which should get it around the 20 Celsius value. So you got to worry about the deltas between the two. You can't just like overdrive it. So that the output of the last stage is around, once it hits like 90 something, then the next stage will start kicking in. And because that of the second stage, the condensation part is around 90, it makes it easy to get that final evaporation down to 20. So gives you like that delta, and part of that was sort of like mucking with it. And I can always tune it a little bit. Like I can tune once it's running, I can probably tune it if it's not going low enough. Storm hit, you know. So I'm kind of stuck in here during the storms. Fortunately, I have all my stuff in here. It's actually a convenient storm part. I'm all ready to. Just want to close that door. Okay, this is pretty convenient. Finish wiring everything up and putting more radiators in it. So I need to attach the analyzer. I'm thinking where to put it because of the wiring. And I'm going like right there, probably a good place, but then the housing's in the way. The housing was down one more, it'd be easier. So we'll move this. Clean up the wiring. Okay, we'll extend this pipe out a little bit. Got the spot, and then we drop the analyzer, and the wiring all just works out really well. Perfect. Actually missed that data connection to the door. I'll figure that out when I realize the door doesn't open. We'll fix that later. All right, so the way the script works is I use a batch write, named batch write. So we call these CoolingDoors. That's what the script has. So the funny story about this is why originally I didn't have the name. I just did a batch, right? So I was testing this out, and then the doors of my test base opened up, and the whole base vented out. So I go, I probably should name these things. So now I name them and I isolate everything between a transformer. There's a double safety check. All right, so this is pretty simple. All we have is, since the doors are storm stopped, storms are not very long on Vulcan, and they're not really useful. I can't think of anything you can do with the storm. They happen so short, you know, and it's almost like, you know, it's almost taking advantage of it. It's almost pointless. I mean, they had last longer. Like, you had a storm that went on for like, you know, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, like 2 days of storms. That would, then you really got to plan for it, and you really just can't just ignore it. I mean, I can be out mining and the storm is so short, I just, you know, just sit on the ground somewhere and do some local mining until the storm stops. All right, so that door, everyone's open. All right, so let's put radiators on our insulated pipes. That's how I roll. And that's, speaking of how I roll, I mean, obviously I don't do everything right, and I do things in a certain way, and that's fine. So always question what people do in these YouTube videos and make improvements. I'm sure if I restarted this scenario, I would do a lot of things a lot different. But so be it. As I said, the reason why I put insulated pipes here, because I really don't need to, is one, steel is cheap. And if I tear this out and rebuild a new base somewhere, I can use insulated pipes anywhere. But if I have a whole crap load of, uninsulated pipes, I may end up with all these pipes I had nothing to do with. So then I have to just recycle them or stack them up or something. So that's my reason, good or bad, agree or disagree. All right, so we have our little room done. I can go back and extend. I can make another room go further. I can put the different readers in there if I had to, so I can always, we'll go with this for now and see how things go. We can always tune it up. I don't want to F around with it too long because, other things are not getting done. I just want to get enough going that we can get this thing up and running. Okay, turn it on. Okay, so we got quite a bit of moles in here. I'm just deciding, is this enough? Is it not enough? Is it, whatever. So while that's cooking, we'll continue. So this is our pollutant lines. Yeah, we better get some more pipes. That's the problem with these big bases. You run these long pipe runs. One thing I want to do is I want to have a centralized, have a centralized O2 cooling line and et cetera, running through this, like the center of the base. But this bases get kind of weird, and it's getting messy. And without literally building a whole new base next to it and tearing this one down, I don't know if I can fix it. All right, so another key thing is these pollutant are independent. They are not connected. If you connect them, that's bad. Heat will leak the wrong direction, and you don't want these tanks will start cooling down after a while too. Once it runs, this whole system it takes a couple days to get running and it really get to the correct operating temperature. So when you first start it up, it's just trying to get things. It's all this gas is really hot. You have hot pollutants and hot CO2, and it just takes it a while to really get things into the normal range. And once all these working gases get into range, then the cooling effect just accelerates. All right, so we're still playing with our water here. Our radiator's empty, so turn it off. I can reach it. And that's perfect. And pump all the water in here, and then let that cool, and we get more water. Okay, so once I get the CO2 filled up enough, I'll just switch over to pollutants and do that next phase. So basically, at the end of this episode, we'll be in the middle of still filling a pollutant unit. So we won't start this sucker up until the next episode. Just to provide some excitement. I wish these pipes stacked more. 20 doesn't seem to be enough. I need like a stacking. They should make a stacking change. And this is where I get the bad news. Another potato here. Yum yum. Okay. Uh-oh. Plants are dying. Not enough water. Okay, so fortunately I have that big tank of water sitting outside. I already ran that pipe all the way down. I just need to link it from the inside across. So I just need to make a bunch. In this case, I'll make non-insulated water pipes. So let's stop this. I'm going back and forth. Insulated, non-insulated. We'll do non-insulated in this case. Okay, we don't need that valve. Probably don't need to read it for a while. Some more water. All right, so if I didn't have that big tank of water, which I bought, one, I could just go back and just unplant everything. Just take it, it's unplanted all before it dies. And so I have plenty of seeds. I can always restart. I could take the water that's coming out. It's a little toasty, but take the water that I'm making and just route it down. Just get a little bit in there and put some radiators on to radiate into the room to cool it down. And that may still require, I'm picking everything out until I get the water situation cooled down enough and then do that. So I sort of ignored the whole, you know, they were growing, they were happy, and I didn't really monitor the water supply in there. But and I said, worst come to worst, I just pick everything and then replant once I resolve the issue. When I pick everything, I would have a lot of food stacked around, so that give me time to replant and grow things. I'm trying to think if I still have cereal bars laying around. I think I do. Yeah, they're all. So the other problem, I ran out of O2. So we ran out of water and not enough CO2. We're going to deal with that. Okay, so let's grab some out of our tank. That will help. Okay, that seems to make them happy now. Got some empty planters there I should plant too. I'm just looking at this and that suit. Was there any waste gas in there? But nope. Okay. The plus side of me effing around in here is that I had more time to get my hygiene in a better condition. So we can grab some more CO2 outside and drop that in here. Just double check everything before I zip out of here. And we'll zip all the way down here. Yeah, I can't wait to automate this stuff. Run all the way back. We'll toss that in there, and that should give us a little more time. So as I said, that once the AC system is running, that will make this process much easier. Now, if I ever do a normal Vulcan scenario, I would definitely go with the deluxe version because you have a little more time when you start up. So, although it takes quite a bit of room, you know, I have all this, you know, it's what, 4 frames across 5 frames, 5x3 area. Okay, so that's enough O2, CO2. I'm just trying to keep the pressure even. It doesn't matter. I'm just being weird here. All right, so we're backing it up, so we have the gas kind of move in this direction. I tried to avoid the gas magically vanishing. You pull off that last pipe and it just goes away. And we're just going to clean up the pipe while we're here, just to make it all look pretty. Okay, make sure we got almost got a little over 4 megs in here, a little under 4 megs. 4 megs is good. I have no clue what the optimum pressure is, but 4 megs, I'll call 4 megs good. And then you have the trade-off. The more gas you have between stages, the slower it reacts. The pro side, the slower it reacts. So, all right, and we're backing this up. So we want to back it up into that tank. So all the gas is moving towards the tank. And we got lots of pipe. Probably a whole locker full of pipe. Then we'll pull this off. Yeah, I think I'm pretty much considering keeping this a closed loop system, and so we really don't have to inject more CO2. Hopefully. And if I do, it'll just be this last stage that I have to inject CO2 in. Okay, that's a lot. That's plenty. You can put a lot of pipes for that, and these are all good. All right, so everyone's happy. So now the next problem is, and the other advantage of pulling the pipes off like in that direction, not only did I move the CO2 into the tanks, but now I don't have any pipes with CO2, so I'm not going to mix CO2 and pollutants together. All right, so now I have to connect these things together. I connected on this side or the other side. I figured this side might be easier. And we got plenty of pipe now, so we just kind of run it down here. I need to grab my wrench. And we'll do the same thing. We'll just have them connected for the purpose of loading them up. Once they're loaded up sufficiently, I'll break them apart and I'll backtrack the pipe from the filtration unit all the way back. And so there's no magical gas vanishing scenario, and it all gets pushed back in the other way. And then we'll separate those tanks out, and we can fire it up. But that, unfortunately, won't be till next episode. So this will take a while to get going. Yeah, I'm shooting for a meg. I'm going to go for I think that it doesn't need. I think it can run with half a megapascals in those big tanks. But I'm just going to make sure I have plenty of gas in there, and double checking all the wiring connection while I get the cable in my hand. That's connected. Got my little tunnel back here. Yeah, kind of double checking the settings. And I can tweak those settings a little bit. I think the, as it's running, and might play with this a little bit and see how they adjust things. But I know these settings will get it down to about 25 Celsius once it's, so I turn my headlamp off. And if it's dark, then I know it's nighttime. If I still see light, I know it's daytime. So that's the Vulcan nighttime, daytime detection system. And since it's night, and even though I have a crappy suit on, and I'm tired of building stuff, I'm going to do a quick little mining run here. So I'm going to do a quick little mining run, then head back into the main locker and call it quits. So that's about the end of this episode. Till next episode, we will continue to wait for the pollutants to load. Probably go ahead and do some smelting here. And then once the pollutants are up, we'll disconnect the lines and fire the system up, and then that's got to cook for a couple game days. I love that beacon. Turn it off. We're actually going to go to the main locker since we have all this ore with us. Oh, I got to fix these panels too. So next episode I got to go back and repair these. The storm damaged them. And probably do some more treating. Okay, so we're making progress. We got our main AC systems almost done, ready to go. So that was a big work item. Until next time, see ya.